Hello and welcome. I'm Justin Costelli, and this is All About Your Benjamins, the podcast, where we'll be discussing financial planning, investing, and non-financial topics like personal development, fitness, and nutrition. You can learn more and stay up to date at allaboutyourbenjamins.com.
Justin Costelli is a financial advisor and founder of RLS Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor in Indiana. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not advice. Talk to your financial advisors if you have questions.
Well, this conversation wouldn't be happening without my good friend Scott Frank introducing me to your book, So 7 Stages of Money Maturity, and everything that you've done. So Scott is an advisor that's a friend of mine out in California, has gone through the registered life planning designation. I'm pretty sure he's finished it up, and an XY Planning Network member with me. So he's a former guest, and he put me on to you. And as soon as I hung up recording, I went and bought your books. So had to give Scott an acknowledgement. And then also, George, I want to thank you for taking time to come chat with me for a little bit.
My pleasure, Justin. And you couldn't be in better company than if you spend time with Scott Frank.
I would agree. Now, I don't know if you know this. I mentioned as soon as I got done with him, I went and bought Money Maturity, and then I also bought Light the Torch. And do you know how hard that book is to come by?
I do. If you got $200, I can get you a copy.
So listen, I lucked out. I went immediately after we got done recording, and I got a copy for $24.
Wow, fantastic!
And then I put it out there, and I had some friends on Twitter could reach out saying they tried to get it, and it was like $150. And I said, I lucked out in getting that copy. So if I'm ever at a conference where you're going to be, I'm bringing that book with me to get it autographed, and it will be priceless.
That's great.
So there's so many things I want to cover today, and I don't know if very many of my listeners beyond what Scott and I talked about will know about what it is that you kind of coach your advisors on and have put out there, mainly because it's my experience that most financial advisors don't dive as deep as the life planning designation and that practice goes into, which is why consumers don't know about it. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, is for my advisor listeners, hey, there's another way that we could be doing planning that would help us better serve our clients. And for my consumer listeners, hey, if your financial advisor is not doing this, there are advisors, and this is another way. So there's a lot of ground I want to go to. But before we get to your practice as life planning and kind of living intentionally with money, can you maybe give a real quick background of how you got to that part of planning?
Yeah, well, I was a little different at the very beginning of the whole thing. I never wanted to be in financial work in my life. I never wanted to be there. I wanted to be an artist. I have a strong spiritual tradition in my family, and I wanted to be spiritually inclined, to be a meditator, to try different traditions, all these different things. I wanted to live in nature. Those were my passions. And back when I was, your age, there was this saying, "Do what you love, and the money will follow." Mm-hmm. But I never found anyone who would pay me even a penny for one of my poems. And I never found anyone who would pay me for a meditation. So pretty soon I realized I had to make a living. And so I went back to what I was strong at. I was always very good at math. And so I'd minored in economics at Harvard. And so I dove into, I learned about financial planning just at its infancy, just as it was beginning as a profession. And I dived into it. I was doing tax returns for a living, and then became a financial planner and an investment manager from that work. So, but the passion that I had was really to live a different life. And that's, I think, why life planning came into existence. And my passion is not other people's passions. Most people want to spend more time with their family. They want to have more freedom in their life, more freedom to direct their life, live at their own hours. Many people would much rather be entrepreneurial than be working for a big company. But the differences are huge amongst people. But the point is that most of us are living, as Thoreau said, an element of our life is of quiet desperation. We're not quite doing what it is that we'd really love to be doing. Mm-hmm. And that was where I found myself. And as a consequence, as I was picking up the skills of financial planning, financial advice, and financial business in general, I realized that what I really wanted to do was to use those skills to give myself the freedom. And then as I did that, I realized that I could help everybody that I met with those same skills.
So why do you think most people aren't living but just a fraction of themselves?
I think we live a lot in an institutional world that is we are. I mean, even the CFP designation that most people in the network that you're involved in have, that CFP designation is all about spreadsheets. It's all about laws. It's all about products. Truth is, very little is really about what the client is and what the client really wants. And so we get in this mindset that to be a professional, it's all about laws or it's all about products. And that's really not, I mean, and the funny thing, Justin, really is, you think about this, and I know you're a big proponent. You have to be, if you're part of the XY network, you're a big proponent of the fiduciary standard.
Mm-hmm.
But the fiduciary standard, the way everybody interprets it, is that it's all about how you charge. It's all about money. But the truth is that the fiduciary standard is really about putting your clients first.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't put your clients first without listening to them, without really getting to know them and finding out who they really want to be. And so that's, as I said, we're dominated by these large institutional images that comes from the legal profession, from the banking profession, from the brokerage profession. And we never got the idea from any of those professions that the client comes first.
I'm in total agreement that fiduciary should not mean how do you charge, because there's plenty of fee-only advisors that are not acting as fiduciaries, and there's good people in the commission world that are doing good work by their clients as well. I will say that many times. The reason I set my business up the way I did was just logistically and kind of the way it works. But I will never say that my way is the only best way. So this is not something I sent to you ahead of time, but it sparked with what you just said. So if the focus should be fiduciary and on the client, but yet to your point, I would agree that putting the client first isn't always product. It's helping them find themselves. How do we reshape the profession so that fiduciary allows us to do what you think is best for clients?
Well, again, in the languaging, it's because this is such unfamiliar territory. Even as you ask the question, you're using some languaging like help the client find themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what I do or I train. What I do is I train the advisor to listen, really listen well. And their goal is to deliver with their financial skills and with their listening skills to deliver the client into their dream of freedom, into something that feels exhilarating for them, so that when they leave their meeting with you, they're on fire because they feel that something's possible they never realized was possible before. So I don't know that I help them realize that. I do, of course, we do, of course, but the real image is to listen so well that the client reveals naturally and longs to speak to you. When you're with someone that you really like, a mentor, a few years older to dozens of years older, and they're really listening to you, you feel like sharing more with them because it's so rare to be listened to. So that's really what we train our advisors to do. We train them to certainly be aware of psychological issues, but we're not therapists. What we are is great listeners, and then we train them to be inspired and profoundly appreciative and optimistic about what it is the client really wants to do, which may be playing jazz on Wednesday nights in a local club, or maybe spending more time in nature or more time with their family. And then we're very excited. We say, we can do that. Let's do that.
And I remember Scott telling me that a big part of it was listening and getting to the point where you ask the question and then you shut up. And I joked with him. I said, that's one of my weaknesses. And I try to engage to help the conversation go, but also understand that sometimes prohibits the client from getting to where they need to go because I'm interrupting them, taking them other places unintentionally, but I need to back it off and just be quiet.
That's a huge part of the training. we have we have three major trainings that we give, but the one that's the real signature program is a 5-day training. And the main skill I think that Scott and everybody else learns is to pause, because it feels awkward at first.
Mm-hmm.
And the client might even feel awkward at first, but mostly it's the advisor who feels awkward, because, we're used to thinking that we're the experts. And so we want to explain, or we want to ask profound questions or technical questions or whatever. And when we have a really open-ended question and we just listen, and we pause for a long time, sometimes the client will fill it in, and they'll find their way to speak who they really are. That's what we want more than anything. We want the client to feel their authenticity, to realize that they are revealing who they really are to someone who's going to be there for them, perhaps for decades thereafter. And they begin to realize, wow, if this person can know me that well, I know they're going to deliver exactly what I need to get the life that I want.
One of my memorable experiences when I started to figure out asking deeper questions. So maybe not, I'm not very good at the listen. Well, I'm good at listening. I'm not good at being quiet. So that would improve my listening. But I remember as I tried to figure out how to get people to go deeper and tell me more about their values about money, and money is very emotional. I had a client cry in a meeting. And this is going to sound very weird, but when I got done with that meeting, I was extremely excited. And it's not that I want to make my clients cry, but that I was able to get her to open up enough to where the emotions came out. So it's almost like I kind of want, as new clients come in, to try to have that moment again. And to be honest, I'm not overly successful. I think that because we don't talk about money very much, it's hard for people to open up. And I don't think clients come in, at least to me, ready to dive that deep. I think they're ready to go over the superficial goals of retirement, college, and those are realistic, but getting them to talk about what's the life they really want to live and what would they really want to be doing. And we'll touch on your 3 questions because I know that helps. But I was just gonna say, I remember that early in my career when I had my client cry and being excited that actually happened.
Yeah. I can well imagine that, Justin. And I think one of the things there that's really important, when you begin to realize that you're on the verge of both doing some great work and also making some really dumb mistakes. And the reason is that we think back on what we just did and we think, well, that's the way, but it's not a cookie cutter kind of approach. And normally we think it's about asking the right questions. And we think it's about even therapy type of stuff. What does a therapist do? And it turns out that it's really not, that those kinds of questions can feel even invasive to a client. And so they can get more resistant. And it really is, again, it's much more about listening, and we don't realize that. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, what we train, the very first meeting that we do, we ask one just ridiculously simple question. And we pretty much follow that question with another even dumber question. Basically, we go, why are you here? What would you like to accomplish? Why are you here? And then we pause and we just let it be. Mm-hmm. And then the client will go so far, and when they're finished, we don't say anything. We might go, oh, I mean, we might have a little affect, or wow, or we might go, oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? But that's it. We don't ask a question. And we let that affect sink in, that the client hears that we're really there. We heard what they said. Mm-hmm. And if there's a long pause, we'll throw in one other question. And it's a very simple one. It's just, anything else? And it's really an invitation. It's totally open-ended. It's not asking them, what was your difficult money experience, or, in a way we're asking, what do you want to do with your money eventually? Mm-hmm. But it's the frame is much more them, because if we start talking about what would you like to do in retirement, suddenly all they're thinking about is retirement. Mm-hmm. They're not thinking about now. They're not thinking about their kids that are growing up. They're not thinking about their current situation and what's going on, and how uptight they feel in certain areas and how they long for a certain kind of freedom. So we don't hear any of that. So we don't ask them about retirement. We just say, "Why are you here?" And then a way of framing that, another way of framing it would be, if we're gonna work together over the next several years or next several decades, what would you like to come out of that? And they might start by saying, well, I want my 401k and my
Mhm.
portfolio and all that. And you just go, yeah, anything else? And they'll go, well, I want my kids educated. Oh, wow. And when they hear that you're interested in the kids, they go, yeah, this one's in this kind of school and this one's over here. And I don't know if it's just quite right. And now you're beginning to get some stuff that's really valuable.
So you're kind of describing the process of taking the clients through the stages of money maturity. So how did those 7 stages come up?
Yeah. Earlier you were talking about um, the 7 stages of money maturity, the book, and then the
Mhm.
book that's now very hard to get, the
Mhm.
Lighting the Torch book. The Lighting the Torch book is a book really was designed for advisors, and it's about a process of meeting by meeting, and that's kind of what I've been talking about.
Mhm.
And there's another book that's also for the consumers about that process, and that's called Life Planning for You. And there's a website that's for free that consumers can use. And there's also an advisor portal for it, where an advisor wizard where advisors can work with it as well. But it's called lifeplanningforyou.com. And all of those work with this process of evoke, where you first start with open-ended question and just listening. And the 7 stages of money maturity was my first book on this, and it's really a psychology of money, as you know. And thank you
Mhm.
for having read it and appreciated it. It's kind of a psychology of money. It's a bit of a philosophy of money. It's got some practical stuff in there about investing and taxes and various things, and it describes how we mature from being rather neurotic and driven in perhaps inappropriate ways around money to feeling really fulfilled around it. So I love the book personally, but at the same time, it's 20 years old.
Mhm.
And so I've done a lot since then to build that movement. But it's still, I think, the book that most people go back to and talk about. And those 7 stages start with kind of childhood experiences and belief systems that we cling to. And sometimes they're unfortunate, they're clung to, and they can harm a family, they can harm your spouse, your relationship. Um, when you're clinging too much to something, like you might be feel like saving a lot and your spouse might want to spend a lot, and how do you arrive at what's the right thing to do? And if you're clinging to an old belief system, and then emotions get in, and that's the second, it's called pain, emotions get in, well, that's problematic. So you have to work that through. And there are 3 stages of adulthood, and we call them knowledge, understanding, and vigor. And knowledge is what you're a master at, and,
Mhm.
and everybody in the business. You're in the top 1% in terms of what do you know about money and all of that. And but there's also the opening of the heart, the maturing of the heart, so that the heart feels at ease in relation to money, and it has more access to generosity or patience or kindness. And then there's vigor and vitality, because a lot of people are really drained around money. They're almost codependent and don't have vitality in their relationship with money. So those 3 are very, very important. And in a client engagement, I don't talk about them so much, but I'm watching to see, does the
Mhm.
client have good knowledge? Do they have a healthy emotional relationship with money? And do they have real vitality and vigor? Are they entrepreneurial? Well, even if they're working for someone else, do they have real authority, authenticity, and energy around money? And then the final arrival is kind of visionary action, and what I call aloha, which is a profound kind of generosity of spirit. So all of those things, what you watch for as you're engaging with a client, you first of all try to develop inside of yourself so that you really understand each of those stages inside of yourself.
Can you pick one of those stages as the most important one?
Yeah, I sure can. Uh,
Which one's that?
It's understanding.
Mhm.
Understanding is the gem of the model. It's the most difficult one. And there are various kind of mantras, if you will, with it. It has to do with transforming suffering into wisdom, which is the name of yet another book that I wrote that was a series of meditations, meditative practice, and transforming suffering into wisdom. And in that practice, what we do is we take the painful feelings and we take the belief systems that aren't really working well for us, and we learn to let go of our thoughts, to let go, be more at ease around our belief systems, not be so antagonistic or so fierce, and to let the feelings be, which means to be at ease in relation to feelings, actually be interested in the dark feelings and be able to be there with them without being triggered in some negative way by them.
So you did mention that I really enjoyed this book, and I did so much that I've given it away a couple of times, and I'll have to figure out how to show you. But on my wall up here over my window,
Yeah.
there's this app called Mix Tiles, and basically what you do with Mix Tiles, you take a picture, you upload it to this app, and they send you these little squares. Well, what I did was I took pictures of some of the most inspirational finance books that I've read, and I put them up on my wall of books. And Stages of Money Maturity is up on the wall, so it's one of 8 that I have right now.
Fantastic.
Um,
Fantastic.
so I like those up there because I want, as when a client walks in, that's one of the first things they see is this wall. And I want them to see like the books that have kind of shaped me as an advisor. And not that they know what that's going to be, but
Yeah.
you can look at Stages of Money Maturity and realize that's not really an investment book. That's not going to be how he figured out how to get returns. Like that seems to be something bigger than just money as far as investing, what people think about with an advisor. So I really did like that book. And naturally, I'm going to have links in the show notes on my blog for the lifeplanningforyou.com and everything for that, because I want as many people to go out and find this resource, because as I fine tune my skills to become better along this type of planning, just like you said, you're giving people the resources to be able to do it themselves and figure these things out even before they find an advisor. So I want as many people to find this as possible.
Great.
So another thing about the Stages of Money Maturity that I like is that's when I was first introduced. Well, Scott introduced them to me, but reading your 3 main questions that you walk people through. And we don't necessarily have to go over those questions as they are. I'm more curious to learn, how did you come about those questions and positioning the way that you did? And was it a series of time before you perfected it? Or did it kind of just come to you like, this makes sense, that these should be the questions that we walk people through?
I think they were fine-tuned over a period of 15 years or so. And initially, I had 2 questions, and one of them was if you had all the money you needed, and the other one might have been, 24 hours left to live. What did you miss? And and then I realized at some point that that the I can't remember the exact structure of it, but one of the things that came up was that particularly, uh, this was particularly true for women, but it was true for men as well, about children. And that I needed something that incorporated that time of raising kids and what might be lost in all of that. And so a third question popped up, and the third question is in the middle. So the first question is, if you had all the money that you needed for the rest of your life, what would you do? And the idea was just to get people to dream and
Mm-hmm.
to loosen up themselves, so they saw that their life could be much richer than it is right now, and often with just small tweaks. And then, but also for us as advisors to get an idea that, oh, you like dancing the tango, or you'd like to learn the guitar, or you'd like to travel in Italy. What are the things that they really are passionate about? You like the winter. Wow, that's amazing. You just learn things, and that gives you a lot of insight into how ultimately the money is going to be spread throughout their entire life or in the immediate future. So the second question is, if you had only 5 to 10 years left to live, what would you do? assuming that you're healthy, you're going to be healthy. And there people get more serious and the relationships begin to become more important and legacy becomes more important. And then the third question is the life or death question. And it's, you only have 24 hours left. And it isn't what you would do. It's reflecting on all the things you'd anticipated doing, all the things that you were are kind of excited about in your life moving forward. Suddenly you can't do them. So question is, what did you miss? What did you not get to do?
Mm-hmm.
Who did you not get to be? And it turns out, Justin, one of the most fascinating things is that the bulk of the financial plan is not geared to the first question or the second question. More often than not, it's about what came up in that third question.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really life or death.
Right.
You're dying and you miss something. What did you miss?
Mm-hmm.
And so often the life plan gets formed around that question.
To me, like thinking of that question, I remember when Scott mentioned, I keep on bringing Scott up, but on the podcast, he went through the 3 questions, and like that question evokes, like my eyes water even thinking about it, because it's not even so much, for me personally, it's not so much what didn't I get to do? It's what I'm going to miss out on. Because I have 3 boys, 8, 6, 18 months. And that's like, and obviously my wife is very important, but like the thought of missing out, if I wasn't here and my wife was with them, missing out on them in the future, that's all it's about. Like, I don't care about what I'm able to do with my profession or who I can be as a person, but like missing out on those experiences. That's all I thought about when he said that question, which is why it's so emotional, because I think about my boys.
Excuse me. So,
bless you. So we're keeping that in the podcast, just so you know. Right. This is authentic.
So with authenticity, yeah. So that's it. I've got a couple of 15-year-old girls, and same thing. That it's really, it really touches you, and you want to be there at every moment in their lives. And for most people, family is the number one thing, family or relationship, but not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And for many people, it's number one, but there's something else that as the responsibilities of family begin to diminish, they're eager to get to. And that's where you have these other, I call them the 5 pursuits. And one of them is family or relationship. Second most common one has to do with, at least in America, has to do with spirit or values, could be explicitly religious. And, people aren't living the life that they feel they aren't living with their fullest integrity, or they aren't living with the authenticity that they want, or they aren't speaking the truth always in there because of the work that they're doing. And that really bothers us as human beings. Of course it bothers us. So that's the second most common one, is they want to live closer to the spirit, to who they are, who they really are. And then the third most common one is this wild creativity. I was blown away when I saw so many people wanted to act in independent films, or produce them, or direct them, or write the great American novel, or play jazz in a club. And then there's the others that are business oriented, that simply want to create a really unusual business. Their entrepreneurial energy is really wildly creative. So the third one's creativity. The fourth is giving back to your community. And you know what, Justin, that's the only one we're trained in as CFP. Mm-hmm. It's the only one, because that comes up in estate planning and philanthropy and all that. And then the fifth most common one is actually something about place. And for people who are concerned about the planet, it may have to do with the planet itself. For most of us, there's some sense of, well, I live in the city, I'd really love to live in the country, or have a place in the country, or I live in the country and I'd really like to spend more time in the city. So it's about really experiencing the earth that we're on. It may have to do with travel, but really experiencing the earth and being part of it. So those are the 5 things. And they're not covered in your CFP material. They're not covered when you're taught how to invest. But this is what people care about. And it's what, as financial advisors, we want to make sure the money serves those ends for the client.
So how do we spread this word? How do we get more people advisors thinking about this approach to planning and clients looking for this approach to planning?
Yeah. Well, I think, you're doing it. And by having this podcast, of course, I want you to get you on the 5-day program, which I think is the program that just knocks your socks off.
Well, I'm already thinking about my 2019 is pretty busy and we're already halfway through it, but structuring my 2020 to be able to do something along those lines, because as I mentioned offline, this approach to planning on a very surface level compared to what you coach is how I've tried to approach my planning. Now, the listening isn't where it needs to be, but I never try to let my clients settle for just the retirement. I try to get that deeper, and listening will help me do that. But this type of planning is what I strive for. And I'm wanting to work more with entrepreneurs. So as you talk about the creativity aspect, this type of planning might be something that entrepreneurs would really appreciate and look for. So 2020 is I'm going to try to build it into my schedule to be able to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to be on the website looking at what my opportunity is going to be. So the 5-day thing may be it.
Fabulous. Well, you know what? The way I think of this work, because I talk about your head exploding and knocking your socks off. Well, that happens with clients. What happens with clients at the end of a life planning process is that, I'm terribly sorry.
There's no worries.
Going up. I don't have to answer it, but I'm embarrassed that I had it on there. So, one of the ways that I've understood entrepreneurial engagement, entrepreneurial activity, we tend to think of it as being business. Mm-hmm. But in fact, that energy, that excitement, that passion for life, that passion for making a difference, for being active in the world is something that all of us have. Some of us have it around our kids. Some of us have it around, our spiritual life. Some of us have it around nature. But the way that we've understood in society, because of how economics is structured, is we think it has to aim toward private equity and venture capital and get squirreled away in business schools and hedge funds and all of that. What life planning does is it stimulates profound entrepreneurial endeavor in every single person that goes through it, because you're on fire to live the life that you feel like you're meant to live. So I encourage you to, I think you'll find it very useful in what you're aiming at.
Sounds good. Well, on the outline I had, now's an opportunity to promote the life planning designation, but I think we've already hit that enough. But I do want to give an opportunity for advisors who are interested, kind of maybe a real quick summary of what that process looks like.
Great. Yeah. It is a designation. It's called the Registered Life Planner designation. It has 3 kind of courses or sets of courses that you take. I recommend doing the 5-day course first, because it is the one where you get life planned and you life plan a partner. It's limited to like 12 people and 3 or 4 trainers. So the teacher-student ratio is just incredible. It's a 5-day residential experience. You come out with a new life for yourself that you feel on fire for, plus you have exactly the methodology for working with clients meeting after meeting. Just amazing experience. There's a 2-day program that most people take first, although I like the 5-day better for first. And the 2-day program teaches listening skills. It gives you the philosophy of the 7 stages of money maturity, and it also is very inspiring. And the reason I prefer the 5-day is people come out of the 5-day and they implement. Their lives change. And then the third thing is what we call a mentorship, where you work with one of the trainers or 2 of the trainers over a period of 6 months and a community of people who've just taken the 5-day with you. So typically it's 6 to 15 people working together with a couple of trainers, and you're doing case studies and you're debating, and there's phone calls, and there's it's just really rigorous practicum of putting it into your business and making it happen. And if you've done all 3, you become a registered life planner.
Okay. And I'll link to that as well, so advisors out there can check that out. So you mentioned that a lot has happened from when you wrote the stages of money maturity to now, and that you've kind of evolved. My guess is that evolution is the golden civilization. Am I correct?
well, that is,
or how do we
yeah.
get to the golden civilization? I get it.
Well, that's great. So, thanks, Justin. So well, it's a personal story, really. I, in many ways, I felt that I'd come to the end of what I needed to do in the financial world. I have trainers all over the world. We have 3,000 advisors who've studied our methodology in I think 30 countries on 6 continents. So I feel as if, and it's ongoing. So I felt like I had contributed. And then along comes the 2008 banking crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't invested in those materials particularly, and my clients weren't. If they were, it was in a passive way, at a very minor amount, and all of that. But I was devastated
Mm-hmm.
by what happened. I couldn't believe it, Justin. I mean, I've worked in the industry for what 30, 40, 45 years. I've worked in the industry, and I've tried to bring great integrity to the
Mm-hmm.
industry and a fiduciary training throughout. And I've worked with big institutions as well as with the independent financial planners. So when that fraud, that malfeasance, that mis-selling, that $1 billion, $10 billion, $30 billion settlement after another was made with these big companies, I was personally devastated because I felt that my whole career had been a waste. Nobody listened. And so I was devastated, and then I got angry. And I thought this should never have happened. One of the mottos in life planning is model integrity and deliver freedom. That's really what we want to do. Model integrity and deliver freedom. So I started writing a book, and initially I called it a banking manifesto because I was, kind of, let's go get them, and let's tell them how it should be done, and show the world in some way. And over time, what happened was that book mushroomed into many, many pages. There was a point a couple of years ago. So I wrote for year after year, and it began to involve economics in general. It began to involve our democratic systems because, when you look at banking regulations and financial regulations, it's all through our democratic structures and systems and Congress and all. And so I began to integrate that. And of course, the media had a great deal to do with the collapse that occurred. So I began to put the media in there as well. And a couple of years ago, I woke up one morning and I looked at this book, and it had mushroomed to 1,400 pages. Yeah, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, woo, 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 that's not me. And I was stunned by that recognition, and I thought, well, what do you mean that's not you? And I said, well, that's a journalist might write a book like that. Thomas Piketty wrote an economics book that had nearly that many pages. So an economist might write that book. An historian might write that book. That ain't me. And then I had this, reflective moment. Well, who the heck are you, Kinder? Who are you? And what is this book? And I thought, well, what I've done with all my books, I think all of them, they've really mostly inspired people. And you've spoken to how they've inspired you. Mm-hmm. So they've mostly inspired people. So I thought, well, maybe that's who I am. I inspire people. So this book, 1,400 pages, lots of charts, lots of data, lots of history. I picked it up. I walked over to the trash can on the other side of the room and dumped the book out.
Oh. And then you ran back and took it out and you put it away just so you had it for the future, right? You didn't really let it go away.
Well, something like that. I had a half hour of kind of devilish kind of, what's going on here? And then a half hour later, I began to go, well, wait a minute. There's something in that book that's inspiring. What is it? And I went back to the Word document and I poured through the book and I pulled out 90 pages. There were 90 pages that I thought were really inspiring. And so that was the beginning of the final draft of the book. Mm-hmm. And now you see the book. There's still lots of charts in there about the fraud and malfeasance. There's charts about The media, do we have free media in the world or do we not? And how do you get it? There's charts about democracy and the quality of democracy and the dangers of autocracy that are suddenly arising in the world. So there's charts about trust and trustworthiness and how financial advisors have a very low trust level, and how, of course, reporters have a trust level, but of course, politicians have the worst trust level of all.
Mhm.
And what is the foundation of democracy, and what is the foundation of economics, if it isn't our representatives, our politicians, and our financial advisors? So if that trust level is that low and the level of cynicism is that high, something's really wrong. And I started crafting this again, and I thought, well, let's put out a manual for how you would make it right. And I thought, this is about, like, getting the astronauts to the moon. We're a democracy. There is no reason on earth that there should be corruption. None. There's no corruption. Think back to your economic, what you studied in economics. There is no economic reason for corruption. It serves no purpose at all. And yet, look at what happened in 2008. And look at the cynicism that people have all over, even the Western, the democratic world, about our structures of power. So my aim is to solve the problems of civilization in a generation.
Mhm.
To throw out the things that don't work and adopt the things that do, and let's make a structure that delivers a golden civilization to your kids, your 8-year-old, your 6-year-old, and your 18-month-old. Let's deliver it so that when they're 28, 26, and 21 and a half, they've got it. And they are so proud and so happy to live in a democracy with freedom, and they see it all over the world. Let's make it happen. And my thought is that why not? Why not? Why are we thinking that we can't do this? We got a man to the moon. We are a democracy. It's us who make the laws. What are the tweaks we need to make? And let me just say one more thing that's intriguing here. You and I think that we are in an entrepreneurial society, and we're very excited about that. And that's kind of one of the mantras, if you will, of the financial world, that we're tremendously entrepreneurial, and it's one of the justifications for the economic system that we have. So let me ask you. We've had 250 years since the Industrial Revolution. So if we are an entrepreneurial society, shouldn't there be a rising as a consequence of our entrepreneurial endeavor at the top of every hierarchy of power across civilization? Shouldn't there be figures of wisdom at the top of every hierarchy of power? And wouldn't you expect those figures of wisdom to be permeating their wisdom down through those hierarchies? So where is that? How come it's not there? Instead, we have distrust and cynicism. There is something wrong at the very foundation. Or we would be, with our incredible entrepreneurial energy, we would be creating these hierarchies of power that have wisdom all the way through. So I think we can do it. I think it's a matter of tweaking. And if you read my book, you'll see that. I take democracy, I take economics, I take markets, I take leadership, I take media, and I just pull apart each one. I go, okay, and let's not compromise. Let's make a system that works, because otherwise, we're not going to, the Cassini satellite, one more image, the Cassini satellite that goes out to Saturn's rings, if it were to miss by 1 inch for every mile that it goes, it wouldn't arrive at Saturn's rings. And NASA has a word for that impeccable trajectory. And the word is integrity of systems. So if we want a golden civilization, shouldn't our systems have impeccable integrity? And let's make it happen. It's time to make it happen. So that's the genesis of the book. And there's a movement now that's developed around it, which is exciting.
Well, I was gonna ask you about the movement because I saw that on the website. And to be honest, I've been a bad podcast host. I should have had The Golden Civilization read by now. It is on my desk at home, but it's like 2 books below ones I have to get through. So it'll be read here in the next couple of months, but I haven't read it yet. But just listening to you talk about it, and this is why I love having the ability to see the passion behind it and the belief behind it makes me want to read it even more.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it'll be read.
yeah.
But let's talk about the movement. So you mentioned it's kind of turned into a movement on its own. Kind of what is that movement and how's it working?
So one of the things that I realized that I was doing in this process, and you tapped onto that with a question just a few minutes ago, and that is that what I'm really encouraging us to do as a society is to life plan civilization.
Okay.
So we're doing exactly the same thing that we do in Evoke. We're first of all, we're listening, what is everybody saying and all this. And then we're going, okay, so what's the vision? What's the vision look like? And so we ask we'll get a group together and we'll ask everybody, what would a golden civilization look like?
Mm-hmm.
And Justin, what's really heartwarming and exciting is that everybody comes up with the same thing. They want kindness, they want collaboration, they want vitality and vigor, they want truth, they want science, they want the arts, they want good humor, they want connectedness, they want democracy, they want freedom, they want all of these things that we love. And so every group, but we encourage each group to come up with their own just to see. And then once that vision is there, we go, okay, what are the obstacles? And pretty much they come up with the same ones: greed and fear, internal obstacles; external obstacles, the institutions of power and corruption. They come up with the same ones, and then we go, okay, so let's look at how would we take action? How would we make a difference? How could we change this? And then they come up with really interesting ideas. And there's greater uniqueness. There's a lot of emphasis on education. There's some emphasis on politics. There's some emphasis on deepening our values and living more our values and stuff with our kids. And then we ask for personal commitment. So there's a structure to meetings, and these meetings are repeating themselves. First meeting, second meeting, third meeting, all over the world right now. So it's still in its infancy. There's still, I think we're still around like 100 meetings or so far that have happened. But they're delivering action into their communities, which is very exciting, and a sense that they're not powerless, but that in fact they're creating a participative democracy where they're ready, as the next election comes up, to engage with the politicians and say, look, this is what we're doing, and we want a voice, and we want to make sure that you're listening.
And so does the link on your website, does that connect people to where this might be going on in their area or help them get started?
Yeah, it'll give them where to get started and how to get started, and they can link with us. A lot of the groups are not public, so for instance, you might want to create one with clients or friends. That's kind of typical. There are many I've done many client days where I've initiated them, and we've had a 3-hour engagement with a fun little party, and then 2 hours of real engagement around this. But people invite their friends and family, and they gather around the kitchen table, and they do this. It's a very simple model. So we've got a description of how to do the conversation, and the website's filled with resources to be able to do this.
Okay, well, I will have links to that as well. Man, I feel like in this last 45 minutes we have covered so much. Is there anything that maybe I neglected to answer? I'm supposed to be the host and direct the questions, but I always like to give everybody a chance to pull something in that maybe I missed on. Is there anything that I missed asking you, or that you want to make sure we go over?
I think there are two things. If I were thinking of it wouldn't be what you'd miss, but it would be like what I would like to say to anybody listening. Mm-hmm. The first one is just from the life planning world, and that is to find out who you really want to be and make sure that you're delivering that into the world. Don't put it off. I put off one of my dreams for 20 years, and I would have lived a much richer life if I'd done it within 2. And when we do a life plan for someone, we really aim at the next few years to deliver things, even if they're thinking, well, that'll be 10 or 15 years from now. Mm-hmm. We try to make it happen within a couple of years. So look at your life, think how you want to live, and make it happen. And if you're having trouble doing that, find a life planner who will really support you, will really listen and help you make it happen. So that would be the first thing. And then the second thing is, it's time for us to make civilization work.
Mm-hmm.
Cynicism, we all enjoy our moments of cynicism and we share it with each other, and that happens every day. But I want to tell you, cynicism is a disease. It's not appropriate. It arises because our institutions are not delivering the authenticity, not delivering our authenticity and freedom into our lives in a variety of places. Now, many places they do. But there should be minimal cynicism in a person's life, and very little distrust, virtually no distrust, and no corruption in society. We can make that happen. We can make it happen in a generation. It's time to do it, but we can't do it unless you get engaged. Mm-hmm. We can't really, a democracy where we just give over power to the people we've elected, and they've been elected by money, whether it's by billionaires or rich corporations or whatever, that'll never work. It'll only work if we're engaged. And so I want to encourage you. You don't have to be engaged a lot. And it may be that all you want to do is do more acts of kindness in the world, and that's fine. But know that the notion of democracy is something where you have power to create the civilization that you want. We all do. Let's get together and make it happen.
Okay. Well, this is where I show my inability to be a great podcast host, and that I have no smooth transition. But what I try to do is ask the same question to all of my guests, and every year. And the reason is I want people to hear different answers to the same questions from a variety of different people. So 2019's closing question is, what's the best financial decision you've made? And I'm really interested to hear what yours is.
Oh, wow. Wow, what's the best financial decision I've made? I think you can see I was not prepared for this, although I think you shared it in one of your emails. I think the best financial decision I made was to live with authenticity and to live who I am, and to place that authenticity before anything about money at all. And it's a financial decision because your choice is money or your life in some way. And I've chosen to live my life. And for me, that's meant that I've written 5 or 6 books, and I have 8 more that are in the works.
Really?
And they're more creative, and they have more wisdom in them, and they're just exactly who I want to be and reflect in the world. So I think that's the best decision I've made.
I think that's a great answer, and I think it's an authentic answer. So that's perfect for you. Well, in closing, I'll have links to everything, but where can everybody find? You're not on Twitter or an active social media, are you? I know Kindred Institute is, but are you?
Well, mostly my staff handles that. I think I am. They're actually doing a lot of it. I'm on Facebook. I'm on, engaging with my staff at Kindred Institute, you'll get your correspondence to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and we'll make sure we get something back to you.
Okay. I'll link to the Facebook, to the Kindred Institute website, all the other ones we talked about earlier, so everybody can find you and find your resources. Because whether or not they fully buy into it, because I'm sure there's going to be some advisors that would push back to this type of planning. I do think that even if you don't go all the way into it, we can all still become better advisors implementing just a little bit of it. And I think if we do a little bit of it, it's a huge improvement for where most of the profession is. Obviously, it'd be great if everybody did it, but baby steps, right? Well, I'll plug all those, but George, I really enjoyed this hour. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know we moved schedules around a couple of times, so I appreciate your flexibility and coming on. So everybody go to the show notes to find the books, the websites. That'll all be there. Allaboutyourbenjamins.com is where you can find that. George, thank you again. And everybody, I will see you in the next episode.
Woo, great, Justin. Thank you.
Justin here again. To listen to more episodes of All About Your Benjamins, the podcast, head over to allaboutyourbenjamins.com or find it on iTunes. If you have any guests or topics you'd like to hear covered, you can email me at contact@allaboutyourbenjamins.com, or you can find me on Twitter at Justin Castelli. That's at JUS10CASTELLI. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review on iTunes to help make it easier for more people to find All About Your Benjamins, the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it.